Hello, Jeff Johnston, Living Undeterred podcast. Once again, I have a very interesting guest. I'm really excited to kind of turn the tables on Larry. I had the honor to be on his show, Midland Money Mindset, which was a great conversation we had. And I didn't realize that Larry has a tremendous passion for mental health. I just kind of see the financial side of what he markets and promotes, but little did I know lurking behind this well-mannered individual, somebody who's extremely passionate about mental health. So I want to dig deep eventually, Larry, into how that transpired. But first of all, welcome to the show, and a little bit of background about who Larry is and what you're up to.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be here, and nice to connect again and have another conversation. And I welcome your listeners because I think it's going to be a very good one. So thanks again. Like you said, I'm Larry Sprung. So I basically have two hats, if you will. I have a financial services wealth management firm, which is Midland Financial, which is also dovetailed with my podcast, the Midland Money Mindset, which you were very gracious and an excellent guest. And the podcast really focuses, it's kind of developed over time. We kind of have focus on three areas. One is entrepreneurship. Two is mental health and mental health related stories. And three is hockey related, because we're and I am a big hockey family. So I love talking hockey as much as I can. So we've kind of gone in those three areas. And then on the personal side, as you mentioned in the intro, I'm very passionate about mental health. I served on the national board for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, which is located in New York City, for about 14 years. And I still serve on their finance and investment committee. I was a product of my own legislation, if you will, or bylaw changes while I was in or on the board in terms of instituting term limits. So I had reached my term limit and had to roll off, but I'm still very actively involved with the organization. And my wife and I collectively, with a great group of people, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that, because we weren't able to do it alone. We've raised about $1.7 million in the last 18 years in my brother-in-law's memory that is set up as a memorial fund at the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.
Yeah, I know you had talked about your brother-in-law. Is that something that you continually share publicly and use that as, maybe a door opener to some of these topics that we can get into? Because I've found, Larry, and I'm sure you would agree, that when you relate your vulnerability first, it allows other people to feel like a safe zone that we can have these conversations. So do you mind talking a little bit about your brother-in-law? Kind of what transpired?
Yeah, it'd be my pleasure. And, like you, Jeff,
A great way to honor him by talking about him.
Yeah, we're open and honest and very forthcoming for a lot of the same reasons,
right?
Because I think the more folks like you, the more folks like me that share our loved ones' stories and those that we know, the more mainstream we'll make it and make people feel more comfortable about having their own conversations about their own situations and, hopefully seeking or gaining the help or assistance that they need either for themselves or their loved ones. So, it's a pleasure for me to share it. Unfortunately, I'm in the position and my family's here, but if we're here, we're going to do what we need to do to hopefully prevent others from, living a similar script, if you will. So my brother-in-law passed away in 2004, September 2004. He died by suicide. And he had a, long battle with bipolar disorder, and he just could not get things right. Various medications, various types of treatments, psychiatrists, psychologists, etc. And, he had a difficult time. And I think there are two stories that I share a lot. And, one of them is, we were a really close-knit family, and he was at my house, all the time. And one of the stories I remember, not too far before his passing, we were in my backyard, and I believe we were planting a tree. And he looked at me in the eye and he said, Larry, I'm running out of time. And I said, what do you mean you're running out of time? I said, Keith, and, again, this was when I had a lot less knowledge than I have now.
Right.
I was a lot less informed at that time. So I looked at him and I said, what do you mean you're running out of time? I said, basically you have, not a lot of responsibilities. His employer knew the troubles he was going through and gave him, complete autonomy to take care of himself and make sure that he took care of himself first. So many times he would stop by my house in the middle of the day and lay on the couch just to relax and decompress.
Right.
And, he was living back at home with my in-laws. So, a lot of his ultimate responsibilities weren't there. So I was like, how are you running out of time? He goes, Larry, you got to understand. Well, maybe you don't understand. He goes, every day I wake up in the morning and I feel like I have 105 fever and I'm battling the flu. He goes, you think about the flu, you had it for a week. He goes, imagine having it for a year where you're feeling that same way every day when you wake up. And, that resonated with me. And, it was a tough spot. He was 27 years old.
Wow.
He was a real good looking guy, in great shape, went to the gym a lot, was the life of the party. He used to go out to the Bordy Barn, which doesn't exist anymore in the Hamptons, used to dress up as Superman on the weekends. And to this day, we run into people that used to frequent that place and they remember him as Superman. So, that's one story. And then, one thing that I know you talk about in terms of the mental health system, and, this I feel really was a contributing factor for my brother-in-law as well. The April or so before his passing, he was hospitalized, because he had threatened to potentially harm himself. So we put him on a hold, or the doctor put him on a hold. And unfortunately, it was going into Easter weekend, and the hospital that he was at and being looked after had a couple of different floors that treated all various types of different mental illnesses. And he happened to be on a floor that was not a very severe exposure to mental illness. And then there was another floor where people were schizophrenic and far more difficult medical cases, if you will. And going into that weekend, being Easter weekend, they were shorthanded. They ended up combining the two floors.
Okay.
And that was probably one of the worst things for my brother-in-law in his situation, because when we went to visit him, and he was surrounded by these other folks that were, in a much more difficult spot than he was, from our view and my brother-in-law's view. When we were talking to my brother-in-law, he looked us dead in the eye and he said, I'm just telling you right now, I am not going to end up like that or them.
Wow.
I'm not ending up here in that situation. And, those two things resonated with me. And, again, unfortunately, ultimately ended up taking his life in September of that year. I was one of the last people that spoke to him. He called my house the evening before, and, he was out of sorts. You could tell something was wrong and not right. And we called a couple of friends to make sure they looked after him. And, after his passing, really the thing that resonated with me was I had never really known anybody who passed away from suicide.
Right.
And, I knew about bipolar disorder and I thought about it, and I never really thought that the end result could potentially be death. No different than my mom contracting or coming down with cancer at a very early age and passing away at 47. It's a very hard thing to understand when you look at him, good looking, in shape guy, and, inside he's, struggling tremendously. So it was really in that moment that my wife and I really made a commitment and said, hey, we can't let him go lightly, and we can't let him go quietly. We need to start telling his story. And really, it all started at his funeral when we started, interacting with other folks that came to pay their respects. I can't tell you how many people came up to us. I lost an uncle to suicide, but the family thinks it was a car accident. I lost my so-and-so to suicide, and this one. And we started realizing that, although we were now new to this world where we were a survivor, it's something that is very commonplace and out there. And right then and there, we made our commitment to not let him go quietly, tell his story in an effort to raise awareness, lower the stigma, and hopefully move people towards being more comfortable in finding treatments for themselves in order to avoid the same thing that our family was going through.
Yeah, and I think, looking at, and you know a lot more as a suicide advocate slash mental health as I do, as I would think maybe I know a little bit more on fentanyl and the overdose issue.
Sure.
But sometimes it's the people that look like they're Superman are the ones that are Anthony Bourdain, Kate Spade, Robin Williams. It just goes on and on and on. And so I think as an observer, as a son, as a brother, as a dad, we need to be very aware and sensitive to these issues. And I think you and I both are kind of relatively new on this journey of mental health advocacy. I know 5 years ago I could have really care less about mental health. I didn't really know it was much of a term. My dad, and I just figured out I get my stuff together, just get your life figured out. That was kind of like how we described mental health years ago. And then all of a sudden something happens, like, a suicide in your case with your brother-in-law, and then, or death or something. It makes you realize that there's deeper underpinnings inside of all of us. It doesn't matter what you look like, color, race, religion, money, it doesn't matter. And mental health doesn't care, doesn't discriminate. I was going to ask you, I wanted to ask you this last time, maybe we talked about in your show, I don't recall, but with things like depression and anxiety and attention deficit, do you think that some kids have these concerns and some don't? Or do you think it lies on a spectrum where, like, we all have depression, but some of us either have figured out ways to deal with it, or some it's just so high on the spectrum that they have to be medicated? Do you feel, what's your thoughts on this spectrum idea? I hear a lot of advocates talking about this now.
My view is this, and I've learned a lot over the last 18 years or so since my brother-in-law's passing. And one of the things that I wholeheartedly believe in my heart of hearts is there is really, and there wasn't really, no difference between me and my brother-in-law,
right,
or me and anybody else out there.
Right.
The difference is the way our brains are, whether they're hardwired, the genetics, how they've, the brain has changed over time due to decisions that have been made during our lifetimes. Whatever it is, something's different in the brain that is allowing me to handle, cope, address with adversity or other things that are thrown at me versus other people. And I just think it's really, there's really no difference. It's just really a different way of us, going through those motions of going through that process of rationalizing or dealing with adversity that makes us different, because if you think about it, you could put two people in the same facts and circumstances under a same stressor, right? Yep. And one will walk away like nothing's happening, right, and one will be, anxious or be depressed. So, I don't know. I think everybody has the tendency. I think you have to be mindful of when you're getting there. And I think one of the things that I've also found is there's this misnomer, if you will, by the public, I think, or a lot of folks, that if you are depressed or you suffer from anxiety, that this is something that's with you for the rest of your life. So if you go on medication, it's something you're going to be medicated for the rest of your life on. Right. And I don't agree with that. I think that there are circumstances and events in people's lives that perhaps lead to bouts or time horizons where they battle with these things, and sometimes could be situational, right? I know a colleague, not in the financial services, a different area, that was on a medication for depression and anxiety for about 3 years. And he got off of it just recently. And, he was disappointed that he was on it as long as he was, because he realized when he looked back at what he was going through 3 years ago when he started the regimen, he was buying a new house.
Hmm.
He had his second child.
Right.
His wife was changing careers. There were like 3, 4, 5 different events going on in his life at that moment. That clearly was probably the result. The result
Yeah.
was the anxiety,
Right.
and those were the causes.
Right.
So, he kind of felt like he could have potentially avoided the medication. Maybe, he doesn't regret it per se, but he feels like he was on it longer than he needed to be because he was his own advocate and finally said, I don't know that I need this anymore. I want to wean off of it. And then he started reconciling things and realized all those events were happening at the same time. So
Sure.
I think that happens a lot. And I think there's this misnomer that if you go get treated for it, that it's something you're going to be in treatment for the rest of your life. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like that.
Well, the ability to self-assess and know in the continuum where you're at, that's an important feature as well. And for a lot of people that are struggling right now, they don't even know there is a continuum and they don't know there are phases. And so as advocates, we need to try to be aware of that. But I wanted to pivot a little bit to something that I'd be remiss not to talk about, and that's the financial services industry, and talk about poor relationships with money and how that can affect the quality of life of retirees as they grow their portfolios. That's one part of successful retirement, the financial part, but the emotional part can weigh even heavier. And I know lots of rich, miserable people. And so I think as an advisor for 32 years, still practicing, I have an OSJ delegate, but I still have my licenses. We always tried to navigate through those tough dynamics of showing people that, how to build wealth, diversification, asset allocation, the sequence of returns, all these different things that we study in finance. But if someone has a dysfunctional relationship with money, all that's for nothing. So what's your thoughts on that? How can we as advisors or as a society, as financial advisors and mental health advocates, get people to have a better, healthier, realistic expectation with money? And what does it really mean to people? It means so many different things to so many different people.
Yeah. Well, since you've been in the business 32 years and I've been in the profession for 25, 26 as well, I'll be dating both of us here, but we talk a lot about the three-legged stool.
Mm-hmm.
And the three-legged stool when we first got in the profession was that you're going to build, a revenue stream or assets in terms of the three legs where Social Security is something that's going to help fund your retirement, your pension, and your investments. And those were going to be the three legs of the stool that were going to help sustain you in retirement.
Mm-hmm.
And as we stand here today, basically that stool is shot because Social Security, there's debates about that, how long that's going to last, et cetera. Pensions are virtually gone unless you work for a municipality or a hospital or something along those lines. It's very few. Now that's on you. And really the retirement and your portfolio is really the biggest part of that. So we've actually revamped the stool, and I talk about the three legs being your financial health, which is what you were just, referring to, your mental health, and your physical health. And all three of those things are directly tied to each other. If you're lacking in one of those areas, it affects the other.
100%.
If you're not feeling financially secure, you're not going to be working out and taking care of your physical body. Your mental health isn't going to be great. And then, you could pick on any one of those three, and they're really interrelated. So it's more important than ever. And if you think about it from that stool, two of the three legs really have nothing to do about money.
Right.
So if you think about when you're having these conversations with families and the families we serve, we're spending upwards of 60 to 70% of our conversations and our time around the physical and the mental health, because the financial health, is directly tied to that. So we spend a lot of time there. And, I think that this construct that's been set up, for a long time in terms of, hey, you work 30, 40 years in a profession and then you retire, I think it's antiquated to some degree. And we're seeing it live. We're seeing people who are retiring and then going back to work.
Right.
And the media, I believe the media and the reporting on it gives you the impression that people are doing this because they need the money. They need more income.
Right.
And that's true. In certain cases, that's 100% fact.
Right.
They're going back to work because they need the money. But I also would tell you that there are a lot of cases where people are going back to work because they have no idea on how to fill that time void in a meaningful way.
And you just hit something I wanted to jump on real quick because I'll forget.
Sure.
You said meaningful, and that's where I was talking about meaning and purpose. How do you get it from a financial advisor's lens now? Now, you're a little bit different because your organization is doing the correct thing, and that's spending a lot of time on non-financial things. I think far too many investment firms are just predicated on returns and model
100%.
portfolios and fancy charts and all that crap. But how do you install, how do you talk about meaning and purpose to a 65-year-old person, no debt, $3 million, already traveled the world, done the beach thing, plays golf any day, every day anyway? How do you talk about meaning and purpose, someone like that?
You just do it just like you're doing it now, and we would talk about it right here. I mean, first of all, you don't want to wait till they're 65, right? That's the first thing where I think, again, going back to that construct, we're so, our firms in our profession, businesses in our profession, as you said, are so focused on the dollars, the cents, and the numbers. And we're trying to focus on everything else because that stuff will follow. If you have the meaning and purpose, you have that understanding, and you understand why you should be putting money in these various accounts and growing them over time, that makes it easier than just telling somebody, well, you're going to have to put this in so you can live the lifestyle. Well, I don't even know what lifestyle I want to live. So how do you even know that? Right. So I think you have to have those conversations early on. If you are not in the situation where you can, you have to have those conversations. We just had a family that the husband retired. The wife was a stay-at-home mom for a long time. The husband just retired in his early 60s, and he's about a year and a half in. And, you could tell he's lucky. He has a lot of free time. He's filling that time with meaningful stuff because he's got about 6 or 7 grandkids.
Oh, okay.
And that's taking up a lot of his time. But we had a big conversation about that in terms of, what's the infrastructure that you have in place when you retire? What are the hobbies that you're going to double down on? Where are you getting that meaningfulness out of your life when you retire? Because unfortunately, many of us are kind of designed and hardwired to be identified by our role or our work or our job. And, we got to break out of that. We're people first that have meaning and purpose who actually do work in a specific field, right? I talk about being a mental health advocate, a father of 2 boys who play competitive hockey, a Ranger fan who happens to be in the wealth management profession.
I like that.
Right.
I like that.
And I think that that's kind of what we have to get people to start thinking about. So ideally, you want to start talking and having these conversations with the 65-year-old in their 40s and 50s, and kind of having them start thinking about where they're going to find that meaning. If they're getting the meaning from their work now and from their life, how are they going to double down on that when they retire, stop working, slow down, and have all those extra hours available?
I think when I was a practicing advisor, we worked on the 4 buckets, and you guys have buckets. I'm sure everyone has buckets. We didn't invent that. As a matter of fact, nothing I did in 32 years, I invented. But you had your cash, your liquid bucket, then you had your income bucket, then you had your growth bucket. But the one bucket that seemed to not really get a lot of attention in the planning stages, so it would at retirement when someone actually retired, but not when they were in the planning stages, was the legacy bucket. What's your legacy? Insurance policies that you may or may not keep. If they don't need to go to your children, do you consider putting those into something where they can actually go tax-free to to an organization that is philanthropic in your heart, or some charitable, or some foundation, or do you want to leave your IRA instead, and disinherit the government that way? I mean, there's so many really cool legacy things we can do with money that becomes more than just looking at your chips on the table every day, and the whims and ups and downs and flows of the market dictate the quality of your day experience. And so if you have this legacy bucket where you have a percentage of your assets that are just, you're never going to spend and you're not going to touch, and it's going to go somewhere, that provided peace of mind to a lot of our clients, that when they got to retirement, instead of looking at all their money as one big $3 million 401k, we would then break it up into buckets, at least visually for them. And then when the market would drop 20, 30%, or I was, around in 01, in 08, as you were, clients would call in saying, well, my money went down. And we would say instinctively, which bucket are we talking about? And they would say, oh yeah, this is number 3 bucket. I said, well, that's your growth bucket, right? Remember, we talked about, we're not going to be worried about that. If this was in your income bucket, we'd be a little bit concerned, but if it was in your cash bucket, that'd be bad. But your plan already allocated that mindset, that our relationship with bucket 3 prepared us for these corrections. But see, most people don't do that. They'll look at their 401k as a zero-sum game. It went up, it goes down, I win, I lose. And again, I think that's a dysfunctional relationship that a lot of consumers have with their money. And again, you can just look at the outflows and inflows of the markets. Dalbar has been saying that forever. The market does terrible, more money comes out. Market does great, more money goes in.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I have 2 comments. One is, I think on the legacy piece, there are a lot of people that have a very difficult time kind of working through that and
because of dealing with death, you think? Because of dealing with the end?
Yeah.
I'd agree.
And I think also, to your point about meaningful, right, and purpose, I think a lot of people don't have that, and or have taken the time to really identify what that is. Mm-hmm. So when you combine the fact that you really don't know what that meaningful and purpose are, and you don't want to talk about death and your own mortality, it causes a disconnect and almost an inability to kind of think that far down, or think about a meaningful way to do that. And I also agree with you in regards to the markets. We just had somebody in here recently who's very concerned about what's been going on with their portfolio, and just in the last 8 or 9 months of 2022, right? And then I dragged it out. We've been working with them for 10 plus years, and I pulled it out and I said, well, if you look at it, really, you almost doubled your assets with us over this period of time, maybe even more so than that. And really all you have declined, but you decline from that high watermark, which is where you're more or less, identifying and evaluating this thing.
Good point.
And it's tough. It's tough. There are certain people, many of the families we work with get it and understand it. But then there are certain people, depending upon their upbringing, their background, et cetera, like this gentleman is used to having money in a bank account, and, he was in the construction union. So his money, for the most part, from there was in a fixed annuity that the union had, that he saw it going up every month. He looked at the statement. So now he sees it going down, and, but there's a larger education process there, right? And I think that we have to level the playing field a little bit. And I've talked about this before. We have to get our young people understanding and feeling more comfortable about money. And I do not think, I feel very passionate about this. I've heard since I started in the profession, and you probably as well, that, we need classes. We need this to be in the school system, the educational system. We need to teach our young, it hasn't happened yet. It's happened in drips and drabs. It hasn't happened. My view is it ain't going to happen.
I agree.
And I think
I'm not sure that's the best place to learn it either.
Maybe not. Maybe not. You're probably right about that. My kids were lucky because I'm in the profession, yours as well. So they've benefited from that. But I think that parents really have to take the undertaking that if they have the knowledge and ability, then and they have good habits and they have that confirmed, that they have to pass that along and educate their children. And on the flip side, if they don't have the expertise or the knowledge or good money habits, then they have to find an advisor that they can work with, not only them, but their family, and help them educate the kids as well to get better with money and understanding it, and be able to think in terms of, hey, this money is not just for retirement. It's a tool for me to lead a meaningful life that I'll have purpose and utilize those funds to benefit me, my legacy, my family, whatever those goals, that I'm looking to accomplish. And we talk a lot about here, finding your freedom. We talk to families, what does finding your freedom mean to you? And it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but it gets people thinking about that.
You and I are close to the same age. I'm a little bit older. Our client base is probably pretty similar in regards to average age. What do you tell the millennials and the next gen and the younger Gen Z, I guess, in regards to like things like cryptocurrencies? Like, where does that play in for you as a money guy? I obviously have my opinions on that, but I want to hear yours. And then the fear of missing out. It seems like today with the way investments can be so viral, it's like by the time someone sees something, you've already missed the opportunity. How do you have these conversations with some of your younger clients, say in their 30s and 40s?
Yeah. So I think there's a place for all the above, right? I just don't know where the winners and losers are going to be when all's said and done.
If we did that, we wouldn't be doing podcasts if we knew that.
Right. There'll clearly be winners and losers, but to the point, I want to stay up and relevant. I want to stay on top of it. So in the last year, for example, I purchased a little bit of Bitcoin for myself.
I have too.
Enough just to understand and make it relevant to me. And so I had a little skin in the game.
I probably bought mine a little bit higher than you bought yours. I'm just guessing.
I don't know about that, but maybe. But not enough that if it went to zero tomorrow, it would impact my life.
Agree. Same thing.
I also bought a couple of NFTs over the last couple of years for the same reasons, not because I'm wholeheartedly thinking that these are the ways of the future, but I want to be able to understand it better, have relevancy, to have those conversations. So I think there's places for it. And I liken it to, when I talk to younger folks, I liken it to cannabis stocks or even the technology boom and bust of the 90s. There are so many companies coming in these various, industries and areas that it's hard to know which one's going to be a winner or which one's going to be a loser, so you have to take a bit of caution when approaching this, because not everything's going to go up. So we have those conversations and we educate on those areas and we talk about that. And I think it's important. I think there's going to be a place for blockchain. I think blockchains are going to be very relevant. I think out of all the things being talked about, using the blockchain for purposes like sports tickets, right? Or Broadway show tickets, I think is going to be very relevant in the way of the future. There are other things about it that, some of these obscure coins, I don't think they're going to be around in 5, 10, 15 years, maybe 2 years. So I think you got to be careful about that. In terms of the second part of the question, the FOMO piece, the families that we work with and the people we work with, I say this often, we want to work with investors, not traders.
Absolutely.
I'm not a trader.
Right, I'm not either.
I don't know when to get in and when to get out, but I can assure you, if we build a portfolio in the right way over the long term, we're going to do very well with it. So for those areas, we have families that want to have more of that trading mentality with hopefully a small portion of their assets, which we're open to, but we don't want that on our books, so to speak, because I've always felt like it's a lose-lose for us as a firm, because if somebody comes to us and says, hey, I want to buy XYZ, and we let them buy it and it goes down, then it's like, why'd you let me buy it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then if they buy it and it goes to the moon, it's like, I told you so. So we try to keep that separate, and we'll tell them, hey, open up a trading account at TD. And if you want, just make sure it's enough that if it went to zero, that it's not going to impact your life. And we want to work with their investment dollars, their long range plans. But like you said, like I said earlier, I think there's a place for all these things.
Yeah.
I think you just have to approach it like you would anything else, in terms of not putting all your eggs in one basket, diversifying,
right,
and not risking too much where you're going to be in a position to, bankrupt yourself or put you in a bad financial spot if it were to all go to zero because you chose the wrong stock or you chose the wrong coin or the wrong NFT.
Don't you think, Larry, that it's more a function of asking the wrong question, or it's a framing issue? Because the question should be, what percentage of my investment net worth should be in Bitcoin? Not should I own Bitcoin? Because when I did our radio show for many years, we get called back when gold was really popular. You could hear all the gold commercials, put your 401k in gold, blah, blah, blah. And people would call the radio show saying, well, Jeff, what do you think about gold? Should I have and I said, I love gold. Who doesn't love gold? The question isn't, should you invest in gold? That's not the question, because that's an unanswerable question. The question is, what percentage of your investment net worth did you own in gold? I mean,
right.
And that was kind of how I dodged that conversation when people would try to, even to this day, now that I don't practice per se, but with Bitcoin and all these other cryptocurrencies out there, I think my answer would be the same. It's not really what you own, it's how much of it and how long, right? I mean, isn't that with any asset class? Isn't that with real estate? Isn't that with bonds, everything?
100%. I mean, think about, people who work for certain companies, right? You've seen this over your career, right? People, they come to you and you're getting a handle on their assets. And then you come to learn that 85% of their assets are in the stock or some relation to the stock of the company they work for.
And they're dead set that that's appropriate. Yep.
Because, hey, I work there.
Right.
They're
I know
doing
what's
good
going
things.
on.
I'm passionate about it. And those are all good things.
Yeah,
and those are all good reasons to own it.
Right.
I just don't know that 85% of your net worth wrapped up there is the right idea. So to your point, yes, you should own it. It's a matter of what percentage of your net worth is appropriate that you own of it in your portfolio, right?
Right. Well, there's an individual in our industry, Stephen Gwinnett. Do you know her?
I do not.
She runs a organization that's geared towards financial advisors, but it's more towards wealth. Health. So she calls it wealthy instead of healthy. And she's got a neat little niche business building. Her dad was a financial advisor, and she talks about the mental health. Her big thing is the physical nature of financial advisors, because our industry can be extrapolated to other industries, and you'd see very similar parallels with dissatisfaction, alcoholism, overweight. At my peak in my financial advisory service, I was a heavy alcoholic, 6 days a week, probably 40 pounds overweight. I didn't feel like I was depressed, but I certainly didn't feel great. But I was making really good money, traveling, eating at these nice restaurants. A reason I bring that up is I think in the financial services industry alone, you can certainly see where a lot of financial advisors, aren't practicing what they preach from just a pure financial acumen, but just the fact they're not taking care of themselves. And, we preach wealth accumulation, but we also have to look at health accumulation as well. What's your comments on that? And I'm sure at your firm, you guys, you look like a marathon runner, so I'm sure you keep yourself in good shape. Hockey does that to you, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't played hockey in a long time, but I'm very cognizant of taking care of myself.
Health and wealth are interchangeable, right?
Listen, 100%. My wealth, your wealth, it doesn't mean anything if we're not around here to either enjoy it or watch, our legacy or our family members, our children enjoy it, right? It makes it kind of pointless. So, a lot of the things that we talk about, whether they're financially related or health related are things that I personally practice. And, as an organization, we disseminate and talk about that, in order to be representative of that. I remember I was just telling my wife this story a couple weeks ago, and I don't even know how it came up, but a client of ours, a family that we work with, he's on the HOA for his community. And he was telling us, he was telling us about an advisor who lived in his community who's tried to solicit his business in the past. And he's like, why would I ever do business with this guy? He goes, he's like 8 months past due on his HOA fees. I hear the bank's, ready to foreclose and put a lien, but that's very commonplace,
It is.
to your point. So, a lot of the things that I talk about, starting early, I had a 529 plan for my kids before I even had kids. Think about that. I had a 529 plan, a college savings plan for my family before I even had kids. And that's powerful.
It's rare.
So very rare. Yeah. But you know what? Right now I'm taking out money to pay for college, and roughly 85 cents on every dollar is growth.
I am too.
15 cents is principal. So, these are the things that I have always talked about, but I've also practiced what I preach.
Right.
And I think that that's important. And I also think it's rare. And not only from the money side, but the health side. I'm on a Peloton 4 or 5 times a week.
Awesome.
I try to at least get that half hour of workout in. I feel that much better. Try to watch what I eat as much as I can. And I try to, keep my doctor's appointments, up to date in terms of annual physical and dermatologist, all the normal things and the maintenance things, making sure that those are being taken care of. Because we talked about my brother-in-law, but I also experienced my mom. My mom passed away at 47 from cancer. So I see how important and understand the health component. I understand, not living a long life in order to see the fruits. And I think that's important.
Let's jump completely to a different topic that I want to pick your brain with, because I have a real interest in your answer here. Where does artificial intelligence come into play with financial planning, and will it make what you and I do, insignificant? I know back in the day when day trading came around, everybody was like, oh, doctors and teachers are quitting their jobs and they're trading stocks. Your financial advisors will be out of business. I had my banker tell me that. You guys will be out of business. I don't think we'll ever be out of business, but what's your thoughts on, these seems like these online apps or these platforms where people can do a lot of what we do. Not all, but they do a lot. What's your thoughts on that? And where do you see artificial intelligence and all this stuff coming into play with our industry and investments in general?
Yeah. So I don't think we're going anywhere.
I don't either.
I think that there are going to be a lot of tools, including AI, that are going to simply be enhancers to help us do a better job for the families we serve. And I think people have to be very careful about utilizing some of the artificial intelligence and the things that are available without having any human interaction whatsoever, because it could be dangerous. And I'll give you a perfect example. One of the families we serve had an account or a bunch of accounts at a very large brokerage firm. And she was looking to make a move. The service wasn't there, et cetera. So she had interviewed us. We had a meeting with her. And she also went to one of these, online firms, if you will, one of these AI firms. And they put together a great allocation for her, showed her what they would do with the money, et cetera. And she came in and we had a conversation. And she's like, what do you think about this? I said, I think the allocation's okay. I think the investments are all right. I said, but how do you feel about paying $100,000 in tax this year? And it got quiet. She's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, if you look at what they're proposing you sell out of all these investments that you currently have and replace it in their artificial intelligence asset allocation. And that process of selling and buying is going to cost you about $100,000 in tax this year. And she's like, oh, well, why didn't that show me that? I'm like, I have no idea. I said, but I was able to interpret that.
You probably didn't ask.
Tell you.
That's what it didn't show you because you didn't ask.
Yeah. So long story short is
Yeah.
we ended up, winning that relationship. They've been
Right.
a long time family of ours. So I think what we're going to see is that exact thing where AI and technology is going to be utilized for us to do a better job, maybe more quickly, more appropriately for the families we serve. And I think it's going to enhance. And, one of the things that we're working towards is really creating this experience and AI platform within our own organization where we can anticipate needs of families before they even know it's a need. So I'll give you an example, right? If we have their whole financial life loaded onto our financial planning tool, their client dashboard, if interest rates were to drop precipitously, let's say for some reason, and they would be able to refinance, we would hopefully the AI at some point will be able to shoot off a message. Hey, interest rates have gone down by such and such. We know you have a home equity line of credit or a mortgage. You should probably think about refinancing because you could save $250 a month or whatever the number is. I think those are the things that we're going to be experiencing and seeing in the future.
Yeah, because it's already done on other areas of our lives. I drive by a coffee shop and it'll say, "Oh, here's a," because they know I like to stop maybe at a Starbucks or something. Or when I'm traveling, it does that a lot. With Marriott, because I'm a Marriott Rewards member, so it pops up quite a bit. But yeah, I could certainly see. I would call them annoying things like that would get text to me all day long. But if you handpick them and pick out a few things that could be financially advantageous, then it's not annoying. But I do get a lot of these things that ultimately just become annoyances. You probably get 100 emails a day that just one by itself is cool. It's great. Thanks for the reminder. I appreciate the fact your candles are going on sale next week. But when 100 of those come a day, it gets to the point where I don't read them anymore. I just delete them. So it's counterproductive, so I guess we got to kind of be careful how we balance that, right?
Yeah, you don't want to inundate people. You want to make it a meaningful interaction. And, it's the boy who cried wolf. You don't want to just send stuff because when the real thing comes through, people are going to ignore it. So you want to make sure that whatever you're sending is meaningful and tailored to them and important. So when they do look, it's something like, oh, you know what? I gotta, give Larry a call and have a conversation about this because this makes sense. I got to see how this would work for me. And make it a meaningful interaction rather than an annoyance.
What's your favorite client event you've ever put on?
My favorite? We've done a few. We just did one recently in the last week, which I did not think it was going to be great or a lot of fun. And it was amazing. We did a paint and sip event.
I saw that. I saw your painting. Yeah. Yep. I saw that.
Yeah. So originally going into it, I'm not artistic in the least. I saw the painting that was picked. I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to make this. And I will tell you, we had a absolute blast. It was a lot of fun. That was more casual. We did a food and wine and bourbon pairing a couple of years ago. That was a lot of fun. In my view, I enjoy getting with the families that we serve outside of the normal meeting, check-in call to do something unique, whether it's that paint and sip or a wine, bourbon, food pairing, or going fishing with them. Planning a trip to a lodge in April now with one of the families we serve. That's the stuff that, I find a lot of meaningfulness from. I enjoy connecting with people on that level outside of the normal day-to-day, which I find great.
That's what I miss the most about not practicing the last few years, is the client relationships, the in the trenches communications, not the portfolio reviews or the, those things. Well, first of all, those things very rarely ever interested me, to be honest with you. I'm not a under the hood type of guy. I'm a car salesman. That's what I like to tell people. I sell the car, but I don't want to get involved in all the stuff that goes with it.
I don't even know what I'm looking at under the hood.
Right. And you don't want me under your hood.
Right.
We got smart people at the company that does all that. But no, I guess that's admirable that you guys have built a pretty impressive. Now, where are you located again?
We're located on Long Island in New York. Hauppauge is the town.
Okay. I was there one time it's in my book, actually, a story, an NCAA basketball tournament round 2, I think, second round tournament with Iowa played Kentucky there in Long Island. I don't remember the name of where we're at, but
it was probably at the Nassau
it
Coliseum,
was.
because
Yep.
that's
I
which
remember
is
having
no
to.
longer.
Yep, I
Yeah,
remember having to Google that word. But
yeah,
yeah, so we got beat by Kentucky there, and actually that was a memorable tournament because our son Seth, before he was just a little kid. I think that was like in '04 or something. Anyway, well, I'll tell you what, I really enjoyed this opportunity to get you on my show. How can people reach you? And I guess I'll leave you with this last thing you can comment on. What's next for your firm, and what do you tell clients right now for the rest of the year?
yeah. So two things. So if people want to contact us, the easiest and best way is to go to our website, mitlinfinancial.com. It's MITLIN financial.com. They can email me from there, schedule an is there a fit call if they have questions, or they could just find me anywhere on social media, Larry Lawrence Sprung. Y'all come up, and feel free to shoot me a message and connect. In terms of our organization, we're looking to grow. We're in growth mode now. We're looking to expand our reach in terms of the families that we serve, and we're also looking to adding advisors and additional folks that can help us do that at a very high touch and high level for the families we serve. The remainder of the year this year is really, we're focusing on being that this year is a down year thus far. We're doing a lot of assistance with tax planning
Right.
to take advantage of any gains offset by losses and things of that nature. And on the mental health front as well, I would like to share that. I'm doing a lot of shows where we're talking about mental health, because I know my journey has been a little bit longer than yours to this point.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I've seen a lot of change and a lot of good happen in the last 18 years. We're not where we need to be or where we should be, but I will tell you, we are moving along the continuum and things are improving. People are talking about it more, which is going to lead for others looking and searching for help, and hopefully identifying, some of the root causes that eventually will be able to be treated, and hopefully help more people not go down the route that you and I have experienced.
Well, listen, Larry, I really admire what you do, not only as a fellow financial advisor and the work and the passion you have for that, but now as a new friend and advocate in the mental health space for me. I'm sure our roads will cross again down the road. I'm on a collision course with so many different people, seems like, with all the projects that we're doing, and we all have a common goal, and that's actually two goals. To help others, but to also help ourselves. Self-care is so
Sure.
important in the mental health space. I see really good advocates run themselves into the ground trying to save everyone around them. So I want to remind all of our listeners and followers on both sides of the fence here that, in your quest to help other people, make sure that you take care of yourself first, because you're no good to anybody if you're not in a good place. So with that, Larry, thanks for being on the Living Undeterred podcast, and good luck on the Midland Money Mindset. And again, appreciate your time.
Thanks, Jeff, and I wish you all the best, and the difference you're making, not only for others but for yourself. Just continue, and we're here to support you along the way as well.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.